Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So you log into a morning Zoom meeting, right? And the person you're talking to looks just a little too perfectly illuminated.
Yeah, maybe there's a hint of a palm tree reflecting in their glasses.
Exactly. Or, the ambient noise sounds distinctly like a bustling European plaza rather than like a quiet suburban home office.
That's dead giveaway.
It really is. And we are currently looking at this massive fundamental shift in how professionals operate today. I mean, in 2024 alone, 18.1 million Americans made the conscious choice to work while traveling.
Which is just a staggering number when you really think about it.
Right. But beneath that newfound freedom is this massive blind spot that is secretly causing major compliance headaches for companies across the globe.
Oh, absolutely. It creates this fascinating illusion because on the employee's end, it looks like ultimate geographic freedom. But on the employer's end, it is rapidly turning into a logistical and legal quagmire where we're basically treating traditional borders as if they've completely dissolved.
But they haven't.
No, not at all. The international labor and tax laws governing those borders are still incredibly rigid and very much intact.
So our mission for this deep dive is to act as an insider's resource for you, the modern professional.
Yeah.
We are pulling from a comprehensive guide published on smartkeys.org by Felix Römer.
Yeah, which is a fantastic resource, by the way.
It really is. And the goal today is to unpack the strategic insights behind creating a formal digital nomad policy. Because we need to frame this not just as like an HR bottleneck, but as a critical strategic priority for the entire business landscape.
Exactly, because the ultimate puzzle for a company right now is figuring out how to offer that ultimate flexibility to attract top-tier talent.
Right, without accidentally triggering international tax audits or immigration violations in the process.
That's the tightrope everyone is walking right now.
Yeah. But before we get into the solutions, we need to understand the current sort of chaotic state of this work from anywhere phenomenon. Why the old ways are breaking down.
Well, we're seeing a transition from the broad theoretical concept of remote work that emerged a few years ago to the stark statistical reality of how people are executing it today.
Right.
And the data shows a massive portion of this workforce is operating entirely in secret.
Yeah, the stealth nomad. It is such a wild concept to me.
It really is.
Looking at the numbers from the source, the population of independent workers who travel rose by 20% in 2024. But the number of employee nomads, like people holding down traditional W-2 style jobs while traveling, that actually slipped by 5%.
Right. And the research attributes that dip directly to companies abruptly pushing return to office mandates.
Which is so interesting. My assumption would be that a mandate from the CEO brings everyone back in line, but the data tells a completely different story about worker compliance.
Yeah, worker compliance is dropping because their optimism and their satisfaction are overwhelmingly high when they travel. 79% of these traveling workers report high satisfaction, and 81% are highly optimistic about their careers. Wow.
So a top-down memo demanding attendance in a cubicle on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it doesn't magically erase the demand for that lifestyle. It just, it drives the behavior underground.
And that underground behavior is exactly where we enter the danger zone. I mean, 14% of traditional employees openly admit their employer has zero idea they're working from another country.
That's a huge liability.
It's massive. They're relying on blurred backgrounds, strategic time zone management, and just staying quiet.
Yep.
And then another 22% say they have informal approval from their direct manager, but there's no official company policy backing it up.
Which is almost worse, honestly.
Yeah. It feels exactly like the shadow IT problem from the early 2000s, like a don't ask, don't tell IT policy. People used unapproved software because the official tools were too slow, and managers looked the other way because the work was getting done.
Right, right.
It feels easy and flexible right up until the exact moment the system crashes. So is this missing policy issue just an HR bottleneck, or is it a literal legal time bomb waiting to go off? Oh, it is a literal legal time bomb, without question.
Really?
Yes. Because the manager's incentive is purely operational, right? They have a deadline, they have a skilled employee, and they don't care if that employee is writing code in Ohio or Oaxaca as long as the project ships.
Makes sense from their perspective.
Exactly. But relying on that informal thumbs up creates a massive blind spot for the organization as a whole. You end up with uncracked days accumulating in foreign jurisdictions.
Like,
and by the time year-end reporting rolls around, the corporate tax and HR departments are hit with this massive backlog of unreviewed, undocumented travel.
which sounds like a nightmare.
It is, and the strategic approach to fixing this has to vary by company size.
How so?
Well, startups use flexibility aggressively to win talent wars against bigger players, right? They have to. Mid-sized firms need these frameworks to scale their operations safely. And enterprise companies, they have to standardize global mobility simply to reduce the sheer mathematical volume of their compliance risk across thousands of employees.
Okay, so now that we know why a hidden workforce is dangerous, we need to outline exactly what those dangers are. Like what actually happens when an employee casually opens their laptop in another country. Let's talk about what the guide calls the four horsemen of compliance risks.
Sure. So the first one is immigration.
Okay.
People assume that if they can enter a country, they can work there. But tourist entry is not work authorization.
Right. They're two completely different things.
Exactly. Then there's the second risk, which is tax and permanent establishment, or PE.
Which sounds incredibly dry, but is actually terrifying.
It really is. Short stays can trigger residency, and even one person doing revenue-generating work or signing contracts can create a permanent establishment.
Wait, let's unpack this. Are you saying that if I close a major deal from a cafe in Paris, I could accidentally make my entire company liable for French corporate taxes?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying.
That is insane. I've always assumed that if my paycheck clears in US dollars to a US bank account and my company's incorporated in Delaware, the French government shouldn't care? I'm just a tourist spending my salary in their economy.
And that is the most common and, frankly, most dangerous misconception in the modern workforce.
Oh.
You are confusing the mechanism of your payment with the physical origin point of your value creation.
Okay, explain that.
When you enter a country on a tourist visa, you are given permission to participate in their economy as a consumer, not as a producer.
Ah, I see.
Even if your employer and your clients are back in the United States, if you are physically sitting on French soil and performing work, the local authorities view that as local employment activity.
But they want their cut.
Exactly. They have strict labor protection laws designed to prevent foreign workers from operating outside of their local tax frameworks.
So just negotiating a contract can drag the whole parent company into a foreign tax bracket.
Precisely. If a sales director is sitting in Berlin for 3 weeks and they actively negotiate and sign a major software contract, the German tax authority can argue the company now has a permanent establishment in Germany.
Because the economic value was negotiated on German soil.
Exactly. And the financial exposure for the company can be catastrophic, scaling into the millions.
All because one employee wanted to work from a different time zone.
Yeah. And the third horseman is payroll and Social Security.
Right. The host country might require payroll registration.
Mm-hmm. They might demand income tax withholding or Social Security changes, and it creates a retroactive liability.
Wait, retroactive?
Yeah. If an employee secretly works from Spain for 6 months, the Spanish government doesn't just ask nicely for the taxes going forward. They penalize the company for failing to withhold taxes for the previous 6 months.
Ouch.
Yeah. And finally, the fourth risk is duty of care and cybersecurity.
Now, duty of care usually makes me think of physical safety. Like, if I get hit by a scooter in Rome on a work trip, my employer has an obligation to support me with medical assistance.
Right. But if they don't even know you're in Rome because you're a stealth nomad, that liability is a nightmare to untangle with corporate insurance providers.
It must completely void the policies.
Often it does, yeah. The company is left holding the bag for massive medical or evacuation costs. And on the cybersecurity side, you've got data privacy rules like GDPR.
Oh, right. Cross-border data transfers.
Exactly. Plus, if you lose your laptop, the company hasn't done any device hardening.
A lot of employees assume a VPN solves everything, though. They just flick on their virtual private network and figure their data is safely tunneled back to the home office.
A VPN secures the data in transit, but it does absolutely nothing to protect the physical device if it's stolen.
Right.
That's where device hardening comes in. Full disk encryption, zero-trust network access, and mobile device management. So IT can remotely wipe the hard drive the second you report it missing.
But if you're traveling secretly, IT hasn't provisioned the laptop for that.
Exactly. The data is totally exposed.
This all sounds like an absolute minefield.
It is.
But having terrified the listener with tax and legal risks, it is time to offer the diffusal manual. How do we build a policy that enables safe mobility?
Well, a good policy removes ambiguity. It defines eligibility, vetted locations, and maximum stay durations.
So it's not a free-for-all.
No, not at all. It requires an auditable workflow. A standardized request form capturing travel dates, the country, the role justification, and manager sign-off.
And it must clarify all those equipment rules we just talked about.
Yes, device hardening, VPN use, and who owns and insures the equipment.
You know, rules often sound restrictive, but here they actually grant freedom. It's like giving someone a pre-approved menu instead of making them cook in the dark.
That's a perfect analogy. Clear guidelines reduce friction and back and forth for everyone.
Because you know exactly what is allowed.
Right. And you have to use technology to manage this. The guide recommends a country matrix.
What exactly is a country matrix?
It's essentially a dynamic database that links visa options, tax thresholds, and Social Security requirements to the approval process.
Oh, so it uses tech to log entry and exit dates.
Exactly. If an employee requests 45 days in Portugal, the system instantly flags whether that trip will breach a tax threshold.
Wow, so it takes the guesswork out of it.
It prevents the human error of a manager accidentally approving an illegal stay. But companies must run pre-travel checks with global mobility, tax, and immigration experts before booking.
Before booking, that's key.
You cannot reverse engineer compliance. Once you're sitting in an Airbnb, the legal clock is already ticking.
Right, so we have the framework. Where are people actually going and how do they stay legally?
Well, countries have realized remote workers are lucrative, so they've created dedicated visas. Spain, for example, has a telework visa requiring roughly 2,368 euros per month in income.
So they want people bringing in real capital.
Exactly. Portugal has the D8 visa, despite some recent tax reforms, and Thailand is fascinating.
Oh, what's Thailand doing?
They have the Destination Thailand Visa, or DTV. It allows for stays of up to 180 days per entry, and it's valid for 5 years.
That is incredible. 5 years.
Yeah. The UAE has virtual work visas in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Barbados has a welcome stamp for up to 12 months.
All of these dedicated visas are driving a trend that the guide calls slow mating.
Yes, slow mating.
I love that term. It's taking longer, planned stays in vetted locations. I'd compare slow mating to binge watching a single culture rather than channel surfing through Europe.
That's exactly what it is. You get an apartment, you establish a routine.
So how does slow mating practically help the company's HR and tax departments?
It dramatically reduces administrative overhead. Think about the friction of changing tax jurisdictions every 3 weeks.
It would be a nightmare.
It is. Slow mating eliminates that frequent visa churn and the duty of care complications. It keeps the employee in a pre-approved, safe jurisdiction for a standardized period.
Which makes compliance predictable.
Exactly.
Let's tie all these technical details together into a cohesive business strategy. Because this isn't just about playing defense against regulators.
No, not at all.
Having a formal remote work policy is a massive advantage for talent attraction and retention.
It is a strategic offensive move. It shifts the business from reacting to one-off emergencies to proactive, predictable compliance.
And it ensures fairness, too.
Absolutely. When you have a distributed team, you have to use objective performance metrics and regular check-ins. You can't just evaluate someone based on FaceTime in the office.
Right. It forces managers to manage by actual output. But the guide does note that these policies must be reviewed at least annually or when laws change.
Because the landscape is highly volatile. The topography of international labor law changes every few months.
So you have to stay on top of it. What is your final insight for the listener here?
My final insight is that knowledge is only valuable when applied. The most crucial step is actually documenting these processes.
Paper trails.
Relentless documentation. Keep the request forms, visa copies, and tax advice on hand. You have to be able to demonstrate compliance during an audit.
If it isn't documented in the system, it never happened in the eyes of an auditor.
Exactly. That documentation is your only shield.
So, to wrap up, I want to leave you with a forward-looking thought to mull over. With specialized remote work visas becoming the norm and hybrid policies evolving so rapidly, we are entering an era where the traditional definition of a home office might completely vanish in the next decade.
I completely agree.
We are moving toward a reality where your geographic anchor is completely decoupled from your economic output.
And it forces us to completely rethink how we build community and corporate identity.
It really does. Thank you for tuning into the SmartKeys podcast. If you found this deep dive valuable, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss our future explorations.
Lots of great stuff coming up.
Absolutely. And if you want to dig into the exact frameworks and compliance checklists we discussed, I highly encourage you to read Felix Römer's full article. You can find the direct link to it right in the show notes. Keep exploring, stay curious, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.